Chapter 12. Meeting new friends. Welcome back, all my lovely little members of madness. It has been too long, and I am all too ready for more insanity. In case you need a refresher, last we left dear David. He was thrust into the realm of the Red Wastelands and pit face to enormous face, with the Queen of Hearts and Roses Red, and all the madness therein, who reveals that she is the true ruler of Wonderland, and that with David's help, she can reclaim her kingdom and give the young boy what he desires as well: freedom. Under threat of decapitation if refused, David agrees to the deal, knowing on some level that he's made a grave mistake. So let us return with Chapter 12, where we will see just how mad some of our denizens of dreadfulness are. When we meet the Duchess of Anemones White and things of delight. What kind of delights? You'll see. David was allowed to sleep in the royal advisor's room, whoever that was, at the agreement that he assist the queen in regaining her kingdom and bringing down the Hatter. The two were at a mutual agreement on the latter, as it was due to him that both had ended up in these wastelands. David had been asleep when all of a sudden light invaded his eye sockets and forced him reluctantly from his slumber. The room he slept in wasn't bad, necessarily, more warped. It looked much like the room he had slept in at the Hatter's castle, only broken, lifeless. It was like a tattered remnant of something once good, once happy. Now all that remained was ruin and decay. It reminded David of something from his early childhood. When he was 5, his parents used to take him to the theater once every month, and twice when David's father could afford. David remembered how he so loved that theater. His parents would continue this tradition with their son until his 9th birthday, when his father discovered that due to failing attendance and low ticket sales overall, the theater would have to close its enormous doors forever. Nobody bought the theater. Well, not immediately. And in fact, once it was bought, unbeknownst to David, it would become very important to him once more, and just as feared by him. The point to focus on now is that it lay abandoned, and soon, with time and the occasional vandal, the once magnificent property declined and fell apart through the years. It was so sad, because for David, he was watching a place that had made him so happy for so many years slowly decay into nothingness. A mere shadow of what used to be. If you've ever been so attached to a place that made you feel so happy and safe, a place where your troubles just simply couldn't reach their gangly arms out to reach you. A place that strangely would always feel like home. Then you will sympathize with how young David felt, as his heart ripped apart in the thought of so many memories being left behind. Well, it can be overwhelming, to say the least. "Come along, Sir David," came a croaky voice. David looked, and there stood a frog in a red waistcoat, much like the rabbits. The frog stood on 2 legs and held his arms behind his back in a very formal manner.
And who are you supposed to be exactly?
"My name, sir, is Cornelius. I've been instructed by Her Majesty the Queen of Hearts to fetch you from your slumber to discuss battle strategies, Sir David."
Why do you keep calling me Sir David?
Because, Sir David, you are Her Majesty, the Queen of Hearts champion. The chosen one.
Oh, good God. Can we not just be done with the Chosen One stories already? Alright then, just give me a few minutes to look decent.
Right then,
he said, but he did not turn around. David looked at the creature quizzically before finally saying,
Can I get a little privacy?
The frog visibly blushed before apologizing profusely and turning around. David threw on his clothes, which had again been pre-chosen for him the night before by the Queen's servants, and then approached the frog.
You said your name was Cornelius?
Yes, Sir David. That be I. Are you, decent?
Yes, you can turn around now.
Cornelius turned and replied,
Right then. Now, if you will please follow me, Sir David, and we will...
Cornelius?
Yes, Sir David.
Can I ask you for a favour?
Of course, Sir David. Anything, Sir David.
Can you please stop calling me Sir David? David will do just fine.
Yes, sir. Yes, David.
David patted the frog on the head and laughed lightly.
I like you, Cornelius. You are quite amusing.
Why, thank you, sir. Her Majesty, the Queen of Hearts, doesn't quite enjoy my clumsiness. She calls me a bumbling miscreant and says that if I don't sort the sheep up soon, then it's off with my head! It's been that way ever since I had to take over for the Royal Advisor spot, it has. Queen's never been more on edge than without him.
This bit of information piqued David's interest.
Wait, hang on a second. If you're not the Royal Advisor normally, then who is?
I reckon you've already met him. At least you have if you've met that damned hatter. The White Rabbit. His name is...
He's the one who got me into this fever dream of a place. It's his fault that I'm stuck in here.
Calm down, David. You misunderstand. The rabbit is just as much a prisoner here as you and I are. Only worse. Far worse.
Who? Who could he possibly be afraid of with the Hatter on his side?
You really think that the rabbit pays his allegiance to the Hatter? You have it all wrong. The Hatter seized control of the kingdom and in the process of trying to save the Queen, was captured and made to serve the Hatter. For her failed future attempt to rescue the rabbit, the Hatter banished her here, along with all her acolytes. Then he sealed the four corners of Wonderland shut and virtually imprisoned all of us. So do not go getting snippy when you have no idea what's really going on here. Trust me, David. It is a generation beyond you.
And what is that supposed to mean?
Never mind that. Forget I said anything.
David wrote it off, for now. He began to follow the frog down a long hallway before they arrived at two large red oak doors with magnificent gold handles, much like the Hatter's.
Cornelius, where are you taking me?
Breakfast, sir.
He said, opening the doors and revealing the massive dining table with every type of different food present upon it. Upon closer inspection of the tasty-looking desserts, he noticed that all of them had a curious sauce covering them. It was red, but it wasn't just red. It shimmered in the light. Pulsated, even. Almost like the thing was alive. David had never seen such a thing, but a small voice in his head whispered, "Do not eat it." He didn't know why, but he knew he should trust that voice. He carefully filled his plate with every food not bearing the pulsating liquid. The Queen, however, piled her plate high with all different foods, and then at the request of one of her servants, a large chalice full of the shimmering fluid was produced.
She proceeded to slather her plate's contents with the liquid before devouring the food quite savagely. She was a blur of sloppy movements as she gulped down her feast of glowing foods. David was at first hesitant to eat any of the food, but upon the queen shooting him an unyielding, nasty look, he began to eat his meal. It was actually quite delightful. Just as it looked, the food had been simply delightful. But the queen kept her gaze on David and asked,
"Well, what do you think?"
It is quite delicious, although...
Of course it is! My chefs are the greatest in the land.
Right.
replied David. She took 5 more minutes to feast on her delectable delicacies before she realized that her guest had not eaten a single item coated with the red substance. She did not seem displeased as she had before, but rather curious. She put her food down delicately, for the first time in the entire meal, and smirked devilishly.
I see that you have taken notice of my favorite dish. It is called thought rose puree. It is a concoction of the essence of a rare rose-shaped flower, which changes color in different temperatures, and a slime that the red salamandrakes secrete. It gives me the power of thought reading. You really should eat some. It comes in handy, to say the least.
David wanted to say no, to resist something which he thought such a vile intrusion of one's privacy, but the last of what the Red Witch had said struck his interest. It then came to mind that if such a thing existed, surely the Hatter would have already acquired such a power, but this thought was quickly shot down.
If you think I got this from him, you are surely mistaken. I created this beautiful invention, not that ugly, horrific, driveling, sniveling, conniving evil ragdoll.
Every servant in the room fled in terror at the belting of the queen. David did not, and remained at the table. As much as he disliked her, she interested him greatly. It reminded him of his mother. That's for another time, however.
So, what exactly is your plan?
For what? What in Carsnoozle are you talking about?
The look of genuine confusion on the buffoon's face was baffling to David. This in turn confused David. He further observed her gaze. He noticed her eyes. They twitched slightly with anger. No. Paranoia. She then began to drum her fingers very impatiently. As she did so, she continued to ram the red substance into her mouth more and more frequently. David guessed this to be the downside to such an extraordinary thing as was the concoction.
To beat the Hatter?
He trailed off.
Oh, yes, that.
She sounded unenthused.
Well, I can't tell you how I do not intend to do it.
How is that?
Alone. I have many powerful friends who I need to call upon for aid in reclaiming my kingdom. These friends come from all across Wonderland, each with their own particular skills and caveats. The only thing that we have to do is earn their trust.
You mean to tell me that your own friends don't trust you already?
Oh, David, dear, delightful dunce, David. Of all the things to learn from us, make this the one that you remember well. Down here in Wonderland, you can trust no one. At least, not really.
What do you mean, not really?
Find trust, but never really show that you trust anyone while down here. They may act like your friends, but trust me, boy. There are no friends here.
But did you not just say not to trust anybody?
The Queen smiled.
Smart boy. Now, follow me
Where?
to the war room, where we will plan our attack and assemble our army.
David got up from his place at the table and followed the Queen through the giant oak doors that led back into the lobby area of the castle. David and the Queen came to another pair of large red oak doors. This time, David noticed two sharp, black-bladed swords with heart-shaped hilts crossing in an X shape on the front of the door. He noted the strange texture of the black steel, which was weirdly warm to the touch, and had strange contours throughout it. He looked into the room, which was quite large. In it there were many things, many charts and graphs with pictures of... Well, he wanted to call them people, he really did. But they more looked like cartoon caricatures of real people than any person that was based in David's definition of reality. One was what he guessed to be a man, with what looked to be a crown of little diamond-shaped points along the rim of it. He was short, with a pencil-thin mustache and hair that curled at the ends to match. The man looked unimpressive to David. Next to his name read, "The King of Diamonds and Luxuries Opulent." The next was what appeared to be a slightly different version of the Queen of Hearts. She was a short, big-headed, and nasty-looking thing. Next to her read, "The Duchess of Anemones White and Things of Delight." After that was a hare dressed in a ratty waistcoat of all different colors. The Mad March Hare.
Fitting judgment,
thought David. What appeared to be an extremely handsome young man with flowing blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and teeth of pure white sat adjacent to the hare. He looked to have a smile that could captivate anybody with ease. And finally, a small white rabbit in a red waistcoat, which was heart-shaped and held a small golden pocket watch within it. Its name was actually quite normal. Initialed LH, it read Logan, but the rest was missing. This confused David. Why such a normal name for such a strange thing? He assumed the H stood for heart since the rest was missing. But this, I assure you, is false. Around the figure were many bright red circles and arrows pointing to him. Obviously, the rabbit was very important to the Queen. David would need to remember that.
So, these are your friends?
Indeed, all of them are necessary in their own ways, but as I have said, you will need to gain their trust to convince them to help you.
Me? So you won't even help me convince your own friends to help you take back your kingdom? You know, for you? If I'm going to be doing all the work, you can forget about this partnership.
Partnership?
Partnership? Partnership? Do you think that I would ever partner with you? You simple peasant. This was nothing more than a deal. You help me, and I help you live to see the mortal realm again. Now, I do not believe that anywhere in that agreement does it say that I would be doing anything to help your sniveling ass. I am a queen, and you are nothing in my presence. Do you understand, you pathetic mortal man? Because If you do not, then I will have you thrown back to the wastelands to be devoured limb by rabid, saber-toothed bear leopards.
We understand each other.
As much as he hated it, he could tell that she was serious. Deathly so. But what really had the Queen on edge was a far greater concern than anything that she had faced yet. All in sweet time, Genevieve. The Queen seemed to regain her composure. David noted how, when the Queen was shouting vigorously, her heart-shaped red hair frizzled and stuck up like a cat on edge. She fluffed her ruffled sleeves and stood up to retrieve her scepter. He wondered where they would go, but figured against asking more curious-sounding questions, at least for the time being. She gestured for him to come closer, then stuck out her stubby white hand. She reminded him of a street mime dressed for St. Valentine's Day. He had only seen a mime once when he was on a trip to Paris at the age of 3.5. Before the incident of the forthcoming year. Again, for a later time, readers and listeners. Such a wonderful trip. Maddeningly so, in fact.
Are you ready, Daryl?
It's David.
Daniel?
She joked before breaking into a fit of immature little giggles. Like a little girl, almost.
Take my hand, and do not let go, no matter what.
He took her hand, and she banged her scepter against the floor 3 times, and suddenly, a dazzling red gleam surrounded the two of them. A giant ruby-colored heart energy encased the pair, and they lifted into the air. There was a flash, and the Queen uttered bitterly,
Duchess!
And then they were gone. The frog servant came into the room, deeming it safe without the raving big-headed loon. I sure do hope that she was right about something for once. David and the Queen were traveling at speeds unknown to a mere mortal's brain, through space and time themselves, to a distant place, one of the 4 corners of Wonderland, aside from the alternate dimension of the Red Wastelands, to the cathedral of the White Duchess, yes! A cathedral! Don't know what that is? Wonderful! They approached the Hermalis. Okay, I will stop. And there she stood. A similar disfigured head, but dressed in glistening white and diamond attire. She was a mirror image of the Queen of Hearts, but something was off, it seemed. As usual.
Who goes there?
Cut the act, sister. It's me! And I did it much better, by the way.
Sister? Well, you surely didn't mention that.
What I choose to mention to you now and what is revealed later is of no concern. You know what you need to know to survive, and that is enough. You would do good to remember to curb your thoughts in the presence of my magnificent powers.
Yes. And your ego is just as massive.
Came another voice. That being the younger sibling, her nose snobbishly stuck in the air.
I wouldn't say it's any bigger than yours is, tighty-whitey. You can't even choose between being a real queen and being this common cottage trash.
How dare you, sister? You know how sensitive I am about my cottage castle. That took 10,000 servants to build.
Big whoop. My castle took 35,000 lives, and 20,000 more were mortally wounded to boot. Beat that, amateur.
10,000, 20,000 injured, and 35,000 dead. How on earth can you brag about such a thing?
The Queen seemed too busy to hear this thought, however. They continued their bickering for an impressive 35 minutes before they seemed to quiet down. The Queen called David to greet the Duchess.
David, This is...
I am the Duchess of Anemones White and Things of Delight. The pleasure is all yours.
Oh, please. There is nothing delightful about you. That I am sure of. You may play a goody two-shoes pristine princess, but I wonder, how would David react to your habit?
You shut your dirty mouth, you sinister snob.
Diamond dunce?
Heartless witch?
Undecided usurper?
Enough! Both of you, enough!
Both of the big-headed buffoons turned in shock at the uproar, as they had not expected such a thing.
I get it, I do. You two hate each other. Can we please get to why we are here now?
They looked at each other in disgust once more, and then brushed off their outfits. David could see where each of the women had torn patches of the other's royal fabric off in places. Both of their hairs were somewhat tangled together, and the makeup on the queen's face was messed up considerably.
Yes, well, I suppose you are right. Sister, we need your help.
Before you ask, I will not help you this time. I told you last time not to meddle with things that did not concern you, and you went against my wishes and chose to attack.
Please, Madam Duchess, we just...
It is just Duchess. Come now, child. I don't wish to remember how old I am.
Okay then, Duchess. Please, help me. I just want to go home. I am sure my mum will be awfully worried, and my kitten, Chester, will have no one to take care of him.
And what will you offer me in return?
Anything, name it.
Perfect! Splendid! Yes, indeed, this is grand! We will arrange it post-haste.
Oh, David, you foolish little scamp! You have agreed to a task in Wonderland. Blindly, I might add. Now, what on earth could the Duchess have up her sleeve? Let us find out. Next time on Madness in Wonderland. Chapter 13. Faced with the sinister sister of the Queen of Hearts, a challenge is placed on the table, and David has so bravely accepted. Little does he know that many trials and tribulations face him in the arena, and just as many horrors. Find out just what disturbing creatures have been lurking in the shadows of Wonderland next time in Chapter 13, The Duchess's Gauntlet.